The Entrepreneur's Library, episode 181.
Welcome to the Entrepreneur's Library, the only book-centric podcast that reviews all the top-selling business books and shares authors' perspective firsthand. This is your resource to finding the next great book that will enable you to grow personally and professionally. Welcome your host, Wade Danielson.
Welcome back to the EL. Today we have Ken Blanchard, author of Refire, Don't Retire. And this is one of my favorite interviews. Now we're looking back at, 180, 181 episodes, and this is one of my all-time favorites. Obviously, Ken has been writing books for a long time and has phenomenal books. I think a lot of people might know him best from The 1 Minute Manager, but there's so many other books, and he clues us into a couple of those in here. The 1 Minute Entrepreneur, a book that he actually wrote along with Norman Vincent Peale, which is The Power of Ethical Management. And then again, here today, we're going to talk about Refire, Don't Retire. So without further ado, let's bring on Ken. Welcome, Ken, and thank you for joining us on the Entrepreneur's Library.
Well, Wade, it's great to be with you. It's exciting.
Before we take a deep dive into your book, Refire, Don't Retire, will you take just a moment to introduce yourself? Tell us just a little bit about you personally.
Well, Wade, life is what you're planning on doing when you're planning on doing something else. I guess John Lennon said that. But I was a college professor and I came out to San Diego in 1976 for a one-year sabbatical leave and ran into a group called the Young Presidents Organization, YPO. And I did some sessions for them and they kind of adopted me and said, "What are you going to do at the end of the year?" I said, "I'm going back to the university." And they said, "You're crazy. When you're hot, you're hot. Why don't you start your own company?" And I said, "How are we going to do that? We can't even balance our own checkbook." And they said, "We'll help you." And 5 corporation presidents, one from Mexico, one from Pennsylvania, one from Illinois, one from Oregon, one from San Diego, volunteered to be our advisory board, flew out here, helped us start our company. And now the Ken Blanchard company, we have over 300 people. We have an office in Toronto, London, Singapore, and we're basically in the leadership development business. And our hope and dream is that someday everyone, everywhere, will be influenced by somebody who's a servant leader, who's a situational leader, who's making a difference in the world.
Wow, that is excellent. Thank you for sharing that first off. And now let's jump right into your book, Refire, Don't Retire, which was made available not that long ago, actually February 2nd, 2015. Ken, and we're going to move quickly, but our whole goal here today is to cover the top questions that our listener/future reader would like to get answered. And the first one is, what was the inspiration behind writing Refire, Don't Retire?
Well, I tell you, when I turned 65, Wade, I was on the phone with Zig Ziglar, the old motivation guy. And he had invited my wife and I to the 59th anniversary of his 21st birthday. And so I said, "Zig, are you going to retire?" He says, "No mention of it in the Bible." He said, "Except for Jesus, Mary, and David, nobody under 80 made an impact." He said, "I'm refiring, not retiring." And I thought, wow, what a great concept. So I was sharing that with people. And then I ran into Morton Shaevitz, who was a psychologist and was on the faculty at UC San Diego for years, on a plane. And he said, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm refiring." And he said, "My God, what's that?" I started to tell him it's about taking a look at your life and getting zest into it on an ongoing basis and keeping life exciting and all. And he said, "Well, I'm doing research on aging, and what I found is that the most excited people are the people who retire to something, not from something." And so we sat down and we decided we would write this book, Refire, Don't Retire, make the rest of your life the best of your life. And what it's all about, Wade, is I write parables, so it's about a couple that goes back to their 45th high school reunion, and they're a little disappointed that so many of the people seem to be looking at aging as a sentence rather than an opportunity. And there's an old teacher of theirs who ended up getting a doctor's degree, and he's now studying this whole area. And they start talking to him, and he said, "Come on, see me. Maybe I can help you." And so they go to see him, and what they really discover is that there's 4 areas that we ought to all look at. And one of the exciting things, Wade, is that a lot of people said this just isn't for older people. There's a lot of people in their 30s and 40s who are doing the same year in and year out. And, in fact, they've quit and stayed at jobs, and all that kind of thing. So I think everybody needs to look at refiring. And we look at 4 areas of refiring. The first one is emotional relationship wise. And we really ask the question, are you doing the same thing with the same people in the same way? Have you met any new people? Have you reached out at work, for example, and had lunch with some people that you normally don't have lunch with and all? What are you doing to get out of your comfort zone and doing things that you really hadn't planned on doing? In fact, they even developed this group of what they call the last minute gang, because so often, you'll ask somebody to do something and they'll say, yeah, you should have given me more notice. I maybe could have done it and all. The last minute gang is no matter when people ask you to do something, if you're not busy, you do it, and so it's really kind of fun. The second area is, what are you doing to refire intellectually, and so, in my age, I'm really trying to learn more about the computer and, Skype and all of these kinds of things. I got a 9-year-old grandson that's helping refire me intellectually with it, where they say, hey, Grandpa, you got to do this, and all. But what are you doing to stimulate your mind and all? The third area is, what about yourself physically? Because that's really important. And I wrote a book called Fit at Last, because I went on a big health program, and I found out there's 6 parts of being healthy. One is aerobic. What are you doing for your heart? Strength training, you ought to build your core. Balance, that's a big problem as your age is falling and all. Flexibility, nutrition, and weight control, and then finally rest. And the only thing I was really good at, Wade, was rest. I could sleep anywhere. So we have people look at that and say, where do you want to refire there? And then finally, we talk about, what do you want to do to refire spiritually? And when we're talking about that, we're not talking about religion. We're talking about, who do you want to really be in the world? Because I really feel you finally become an adult when you realize that you're here to serve rather than be served, and that you're here to give, not to get. And life is not about you. It's about what you can do for others. And one of the things we talk about is that the biggest addiction in the world that gets us off of our whole spiritual journey is the human ego, which is kind of like edging God out or everything good outside, where you somehow, either through false pride, you think you're a really big deal, you're better than other people, and you're pushing and shoving and promoting yourself and all, or self-doubt and fear, where you think you're less than other people and now you're trying to protect yourself. Both of those, you're focused on yourself. And what we really say is that the way to overcome false pride is through humility. And a lot of people think humility is a weakness, but I wrote a book with Norman Vincent Peale years ago, and we said that people with humility don't think less of themselves, they just think about themselves less. The way to overcome fear and self-doubt is to realize, God didn't make any junk. We're all beautiful in our own way. It doesn't mean we don't have areas to improve. And so it's just really kind of looking at your life and perspective on the thing. And so it's a fun journey, and it seems to be hitting a real chord with people, because we're getting, say, think of one of these areas. Where would you like to spend 2015 working on? Is it, intellectually refiring? Is it emotionally with your relationships? Is it physically? Is it spiritually at all? And people are having a lot of fun thinking about that, and then seeing if they can get a support system to help them in that, because I just firmly believe, Wade, that if you stop growing and learning and all, you might as well lie down and let them throw the dirt on you, because you're about dead anyway. So that's really what Refire is all about, is about getting zest in your life on an ongoing basis and really making your life exciting no matter what your age is.
Excellent, Ken. That was a fantastic review, and gave the future reader a great idea of what they're going to get out of the book. And now we're going to take it a little bit further, a step further, and saying that if the reader could only take away one concept, principle, or action item out of your entire book, everything you just discussed with us, what would you want that to be?
Well, I think the big thing I would want people to get is the importance of growing and learning and all, because I think that growing and learning is like oxygen to a deep sea diver, Without it, they really are in trouble. And so I think the big thing I want people to get is that ongoing your life, you ought to be kind of refiring and relearning and trying new things and keeping the zest in your life.
So, Ken, how do you suggest the reader engage with your book? Is this a book that they can jump in and jump out, cherry picking information as needed, or did you really design it to be read from front to back?
Well, with my books, they're all short and they're parables and all. Mm-hmm. It takes you the most an hour and 15 minutes to read. So I recommend you read it, but you can stop after each section because we have a code of conduct after each section, some things you ought to think about in relation to each of the 4 domains. And then we also ask you some pause, reflect, and act questions too. So you could stop after each one and spend some time on it, but you might want to read it through to get an overview and then think about, okay, which of these 4 areas do I want to focus on, and go back there and start really answering those questions and looking at the code of behavior.
So, Ken, there's been tons of quote-worthy things you've said so far throughout this interview, and that actually leads into our next question, which is, do you have a favorite quote from your book that you wrote, and will you take a second to explain what it means to you?
Well, I think my favorite quote is the title of the book. Refire, don't retire, make the rest of your life the best of your life. And I think that's really what's important. I'm 75 now, and I tell you, I'm so pumped up about life. I think it's a really special occasion, and every day I have opportunities to learn. And so I think that's my favorite quote. What are you doing to refire? My wife and I went to a restaurant the other night, and so I said to the waiter, why don't you bring me something that you think everybody around here really likes, and just surprise me, And my wife said, wow, that's really getting refiring, because I normally have the same thing over and over again. And actually it was good. The guy brought me duck, and I just normally don't eat duck. And it was really pretty good.
No, that's fantastic. So Ken, this is something that we love to ask because nowadays entrepreneurs are completely inundated with books. I mean, just on a topic like entrepreneurship, there's 100+ books that come out every single month. And so we want to give you an opportunity to differentiate your book from others that are out there. So what makes your book different from others regarding the same or similar topic?
Well, number one, it's short and easy to read. Number two, it's a story. So what I find is that people do much better reading stories because they don't get hung up and arguing, where'd you get those facts and all. They get into the story and they go, whoa, that's really kind of interesting and all. And so you can read it in an hour and 15 minutes or so. And then I think there's a lot of chance to reflect on it and all. So often books, they go content. And busy people, it just takes, they just don't have the time to just, wade through a lot of material. And so this is one where you can jump in and read it fast and have some fun with it. That's why I've been writing parables for so many years, because I think they're a fun read and people can learn from them.
So, Ken, you have a ton of fantastic books that are out there, and now we're going to ask you for a book recommendation. And so, one, I'd like to twist up. A lot of the authors that we have on haven't written as many books as you have. So, the question is, if there's only one book you could recommend to our listeners based on the way that it's impacted your life, created a paradigm or a lifestyle shift, what book would you recommend? And then, an add-on part to that, I would like to ask you what's your favorite, but what was your most enjoyable book to write?
Well, it's interesting, when people ask me what's my favorite book, I have to admit that my first choice would be the Bible. I think there's amazing stuff in there, regardless of your faith. It's just full of absolute learnings and all that. But I think the next book that impacted my life, and I also impacted what became my favorite book, was reading The Power of Positive Thinking that Norman Vincent Peale wrote. Came out in 1952. And I think it's so important in life. Your beliefs drive your behavior, and your behavior gets you results, and that results even works for you or doesn't work. Anytime it's not working for you, my friend Hiram Smith always says, you can trace it to a lousy belief. And I think that staying positive in life really makes a difference. And so that book of Norman's really impacted me. And then I was just fortunate at age 86 of his, I got to meet Norman, and we ended up writing a book together called The Power of Ethical Management. Integrity Pays. You don't have to cheat to win. And I think that's my favorite book just because what an amazing impact he and his wife Ruth had on my wife and my life, and their whole attitude towards things. It was just really great. For example, I think of Norman a lot now. Norman said to me, and I was in my 40s then, he said, Ken, he said, if you keep your sense of humor when you get older, you're going to get cuter again. And I'm getting cuter all the time, Wade. I want to tell you. And because I think you need to take what you do in life seriously, but yourself lightly. And I think that's really been a powerful learning for me, but keeping that positive attitude.
That is fantastic. First book you recommended, one of my favorite books, probably in my top 10, 15 at most. One of my favorite books that I've ever read. And I got to be honest with you, I haven't read The Power of Ethical Management, so I can't wait to now to go back and read that one. So thank you for sharing that one.
Yeah, and you'll see a lot of gems. It's a parable written, with a Norman type character and me as a character. But there's a great quote in there that ties back to the humility thing. I think I mentioned it already, but it's so important to remember is that people with humility don't think less of themselves. They just think about themselves less. And a lot of people think if you're humble, that's a weakness. No, it's a strength because you aren't going to be there to serve and be with other people if you don't feel good about yourself. If you don't feel good about yourself, I guarantee you, you're not going to be very helpful for people around you.
Yeah, that's absolutely huge. And did that come out in 88?
Yeah, I think it was 1988. Yeah.
Okay, fantastic. Yeah, I'm gonna grab a copy of that. There's only a couple left actually in stock on Amazon. Well, thank you so much for recommendation of that. And Ken, before we depart, can you recommend the best way for our listeners to not only get more information on you, but also get more information on your book, Refire, Don't Retire? Well,
I think you can go to Amazon or Barnes & Noble to find out about the book, but you can find out about what we do. It's kenblanchard.com. So that will send you to our website. And I got people that are helping me, blog and do all those good things that I can't even always pronounce. But I'm just amazed, Wade, at the number of ways you can communicate with people today. But I hope people don't forget face-to-face is still important. Don't be emailing somebody in the next office. Get up off your duff and go and sit down and talk to them face-to-face. But there are incredible ways to keep in communication with people. My grandkids and all, if I call them, they won't answer. If I give them a text message or email them, I get a response.
Oh, wow. Ken, thank you so much for taking the time out of your hectic schedule and taking the time to lay out the book for the future reader. So thank you so much for coming on.
Well, I appreciate it. And being an entrepreneur is really important. And I did write a book for you all you might want to look at called The 1 Minute Entrepreneur.
Thanks again for listening in today. If you'd like more information on Ken or his book, Refire, Don't Retire, check out the show notes at theelpodcast.com. And if you want a chance to win his book, become a VIP at the same website, theelpodcast.com.
Looking for your next book idea? Head over to theelpodcast.com, where Wade shares his amazing resource, the top 10 business books recommended by over 500 entrepreneurs, with you for free. That's theelpodcast.com. Till the next time, keep it on the EL.